big firm, fancy address, go to their website, got a lot of attorneys on there, and they say they cater to ultra high net worth people. If your spouse hired someone like that, well, they hired the fourth attorney style we're going to be talking about today, which is the top dog. That is luxury lawyering at its finest. Now, I don't want you to panic. Just because someone hired the top dog, it doesn't mean it's going to be a drawn-out battle. What it may mean is just more expensive. I've had some cases with top dogs where the parties were being mostly cooperative. And sometimes when you're mostly cooperative, you pay attorney fees out of the joint account. They still see the joint account and you resolve things. My client said to me, they just charge a lot more than you, but the result was satisfactory to both parties. So that might be the situation. But since this is the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast, someone's probably being unreasonable. Someone's probably being difficult. Doesn't that sound familiar when someone's being difficult? Well, let's discuss on this episode this fourth attorney style, the top dog, when someone's being unreasonable. Now remember, the top dog is an excellent swarmer. They can out-swarm most swarmers. They can create a lot of energy, a lot of noise. They can also out-brawl most brawlers. So they can focus on one or two issues and knock you out. They're very good in court. That's really the brawler. Really good in court, especially on a trial. That's what they're very good at, the brawler. They can also outbox most boxers. Boxers, power punching, they like to set things up. So the boxer may be really good on papers because they have time to really, to prepare these arguments and organize them. But the top dog can do the same thing. So that's what we'll have to think about. Now, if someone's being unreasonable, let's think of which one side is. If the side that's being unreasonable didn't hire the top dog, let's say they hire the swarmer who just creates a lot of noise, and the semi-cooperative spouse hired the top dog. And I say semi-cooperative because there's going to be issues that are very important to that spouse, but they may compromise. They know to give to get. That's semi-cooperative, when you give to get, and when you compromise. When you're very difficult, you don't compromise on anything until well into the process. And they ask for, 5 or 10 times of what they actually want. And that's that's the system. That's the problem. So the problem is, if the other side hired a swarmer and then you hired a top dog and you thought you were going to have a really good landing, you hired a really good attorney. Why can't they hire a really good attorney? We could just resolve this. Why do we have to spend so much time, money, and energy? Both of us hire these big dogs to get this job done quick. But they had a different mindset. And the problem is they can just exploit your budget. So if you were thinking of a short divorce, they're going to extend it for years because that's how, unfortunately, a lot of attorneys still make money, hourly billing, and they just ran up costs. And if you go to court and you hired a top dog, and usually when you go to court with a top dog, it's not just one attorney who's coming. It could be 2 or 3 attorneys who are coming. And, it's like double or triple billing. And even if the swarmer comes alone and they make a fee application, in most states, the moneyed spouse pays in part the non-money spouse's attorney fees. So you got a problem. And if your budget for the top dog is like your budget maybe for a vacation, let's say you want to go stay at the Four Seasons, but your budget is only for a weekend. That's very different staying at the Four Seasons for a weekend with their 1,000+ a night rooms than staying at the Four Seasons for a year, which may bankrupt you. Okay, that's the difference. So that's the problem. If the other side did not hire a top dog, don't think just because you hired a top dog, things are going to resolve early. It may be drawn out, and it may cost you 10x what you ever thought you would spend, and 10x in time too. Now, let's talk about it from the other way. Let's say the spouse who's being unreasonable, who doesn't want to compromise, who's being difficult, they hire the top dog. Now what happens? Well, if you're on the other side of that and you're being semi-reasonable, you got to realize that they will fight you everywhere. And I'm saying everywhere in places you don't even know. So the swarmer is going to fight you still in the legal system. It's really more in your office. They're just going to send a lot of emails, messages, maybe make motions. So you're still in the court system. The brawler is going to fight you in court. That's still private. That's still confidential. The boxer is still going to fight you in the legal system, maybe on the papers, maybe coming up with good arguments. But the difference, I think, with the top dog is they will bring it somehow, these confidential divorces, they're going to get this into the public eye. Maybe because they represent generally, A-listers, but your name may be in the papers, in Google, and next thing you know, if you have children, they're going to learn about all of your dirty laundry, which you don't want anyone to know about. That's why if you're in one of these situations and there is some exposure, you want to think about settling early. Leave money on the table. Or whatever you're fighting for has to be so important to you because they're going to put you through the ringer. So the core message is, with the top dog, they just don't fight harder. They fight you everywhere. Here's the action step. Think of this. If your spouse hired a top dog, ask yourself, do they have the budget for a protracted divorce? Is it staying at the Four Seasons for the weekend or for a year? If they don't have a protracted budget, then that's not bad. Maybe they'll just be cooperative. Or maybe they're just going to have to, after, a few months, maybe change counsel. That's okay. But if they're going to hire a top dog and they have the budget for it, they can stay at the Four Seasons for a year and it's no big thing, well, that's when you have a problem. Our next episode, we're going to focus on attorney styles. I'm going to tell you during this difficult process of finding an attorney when you're, stressed and anxious, maybe even angry, grieving, I'm going to bring some clarity to this process. And I'm also going to touch on the 4 attorney styles we talked about and what it looks like when you hire one. I'm Corey Shapiro. This is the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast. Let's step forward with clarity together.
This podcast offers general information only. It cannot replace legal advice. If you need tailored advice, contact an attorney licensed to practice in your area.